It begins with silence. Not the kind that follows a conversation or hovers in an empty room. This silence is heavier, more permanent. The kind that settles when someone vanishes without a sound. No goodbye, no reason, no clue. 1 second they're here, the next they're gone. America is no stranger to silence like that. Throughout its sprawling highways, forgotten woods, and restless cities, people have disappeared, so many that some names barely make the news. But a few leave a lasting chill. The cases that refuse to fade. Stories passed down through decades, shared in hushed voices, always ending the same way. They never found the body. It's always the same void, and sometimes even time won't fill it. It was a clear summer afternoon in 1955 when 2-year-old Keith Parkins wandered out of his grandfather's yard in Ritter, Oregon. He'd been playing outside, bundled in his winter clothes, and simply walked away. His tiny footprints were found in the snow, some leading over hills, some along a frozen creek, and then nothing. No drag marks, no signs of an animal, no hint of struggle. Just the wind, brushing over the snow as if trying to erase the path behind him. Searchers found Keith the next day, curled up under a bush miles away, alive but unconscious. He was hypothermic, his clothes torn, and his shoes missing. But what stunned investigators was how far he'd traveled. Over treacherous ground no toddler could survive, let alone navigate. Even Keith, once recovered, had no memory of where he went. He simply closed his eyes and woke up somewhere else. Years later, a man would look back at that moment and wonder if it had ever truly been his son they found, or something wearing his skin. In the deepening shadow of that mystery, another boy would vanish nearly a century earlier. This one had a name known across every American history book. In 1845, the Franklin expedition set out from England to map the Arctic and find the fabled Northwest Passage. 2 ships, 129 men. Among them, American seaman John Hartnell. Their mission would end in a frozen grave. The men's bodies later found preserved in ice, all but one. In 1848, 3 years into the doomed journey, a few skeletal remains were found by the Inuit, along with a journal hinting that some crew members resorted to cannibalism. But Hartnell's body was missing, his final resting place never found. Only his name remains, etched in cold, crumbling records and whispered through generations. That silence followed the Franklin men across oceans. A silence just as chilling would settle a century later in New York, when a young woman named Paula Welden told her roommate she was going for a walk. She never came back. It was December 1st, 1946. Paula, a bright, adventurous 18-year-old Bennington College student, decided to hike a section of Vermont's Long Trail alone. Witnesses remembered her seeing her near the trailhead. Then she was gone. No footprints, no struggle, no evidence she'd ever walked back down. What followed was chaos. Massive search parties, bloodhounds, military assistance, even clairvoyants. But nothing. No remains, no belongings, not even a shoe was ever found. The case was so baffling it led to the creation of the Vermont State Police. And yet, even with new resources, Paula's fate remains a haunting question mark on a trail that seems to swallow people whole. That trail, in fact, would soon earn a nickname, a region where dozens would vanish between the 1940s and 1950s without rhyme or reason. The locals started calling it the Bennington Triangle, and Paula was only the first. Within 5 years, 4 others would vanish in the same area. One moment they were there, picking wildflowers, hunting, walking through the woods, and then nothing but silence. Some were found, most weren't. But even those recovered were beyond explanation. Like 8-year-old Paul Jepson, last seen wearing a bright red jacket that should have been impossible to miss. Searchers combed the area for weeks. Planes flew overhead, not even a scrap of fabric turned up. They say the forest knows how to keep secrets. The Bennington Triangle, it buries them. Far from those cold woods, in the sticky southern heat of Louisiana, another kind of disappearance would unfold. This one, a spectacle. It was 1930 when Judge Joseph Crater, well-dressed, well-known, and well-feared, stepped into a cab in New York City and was never seen again. Crater was no ordinary citizen. He was a rising political star, rumored to be tangled in corruption, deals, and dangerous liaisons. The night he vanished, he'd had dinner with a showgirl and told his wife he'd returned to their vacation home in Maine. Instead, he was swallowed by the city.
No body, no note, just a legacy of whispered rumors. Was it the mob? Political enemies? A mistress with a motive? His name became a punchline in America. Pulling a crater meant disappearing without a trace. But beneath the jokes, the truth was darker. His disappearance exposed a network of corruption, secrets, and fear. And it left behind a question that still haunts legal circles today. How does a judge simply vanish? That question, how, would echo in a very different way in the heart of San Francisco. In 1971, a man walked into the San Francisco Zoo, alone. He stood for a long time near the gorilla exhibit. Observers say he looked calm, thoughtful. Then, without warning, he dropped his coat, scaled the enclosure fence, and walked straight toward the male gorilla, Coco. The animal struck him instantly. By the time zoo staff reached him, the man was dead. No ID, no fingerprints on file, no missing persons match. All they found was a note in his pocket that read, "I have no name." To this day, the man is still classified as John Doe 1971. No family ever came forward. No one recognized the photo. A man with no name, no home, and no past, choosing to end his life among the animals. Why? The zoo still doesn't talk about it. And sometimes, the people who vanish aren't strangers at all. They're the ones you know, the kind you wave to in the morning, the kind who say they'll be right back. In 2001, in the quiet, tight-knit community of Durango, Colorado, 13-year-old Dylan Redwine went to visit his father for Thanksgiving. He was last seen watching TV. By morning, he was gone. Suspicion quickly turned toward his father. Inconsistencies, delays in reporting, and then bones. In 2013, Dylan's partial remains were found in the mountains nearby. His skull was discovered 2 years later, showing signs of blunt force trauma. It would take nearly a decade, but his father was finally convicted of murder in 2021. Not every disappearance is wrapped in strangers or the unknown. Sometimes the monster lives under your own roof. And sometimes the disappearance doesn't even look like one. In 1974, a woman named Thelma Pauline Sissy Sanchez clocked out from her job at a bar, got into her car, and drove into the night. She had plans. She was meeting someone. She just didn't say who. She was never seen again. The car was never found. No activity on her social security number. No bank account movement. As if her very identity had been erased. Some say she was running from an abusive ex. Others believe she never got the chance. Her name is rarely mentioned among famous cases, but in dusty sheriff's offices and long-forgotten missing posters, her face still stares back, waiting. From dirt roads in Texas to mountain trails in Alaska, the silence stretches on. In 2004, 22-year-old Maura Murray emailed her professors at the University of Massachusetts to say she was taking a week off due to a family emergency. There was no emergency. She packed up her dorm, withdrew cash, bought alcohol, and drove north. Her car crashed on a rural New Hampshire road. A witness offered help. Maura declined. By the time police arrived minutes later, the car was locked. Maura was gone. No footsteps in the snow, no sign of struggle, just an empty car and thousands of theories. Was she escaping? Meeting someone? Did she die in the woods, or was she taken? No one knows, but thousands of armchair detectives still chase her ghost online. And we haven't even reached the end. Somewhere, on the edge of reason and rumor, people start to believe the land itself remembers. In the blistering heat of Arizona, 1961, an Army private named Richard Colvin Cox left his dormitory at West Point to meet an unknown man. He'd told his roommates a strange visitor had come by the night before, a man who knew him from Germany, though Cox had never served overseas. That night, he put on a nicely pressed uniform, stepped outside, and never came back. He vanished from a military academy under tight security. Investigators scoured nearby towns, border checkpoints, and bus stations. Nothing. The Army, desperate for answers, even suspected desertion. But there was no motive, no money withdrawn, no further sightings. The most chilling theory, that Cox had been recruited or abducted by a covert agency, that his life hadn't ended, but changed. His file remains open, his face frozen in a cadet portrait, his fate locked in a vault of classified silence.
Years later, in the quiet suburbs of Long Island, another man would step into the dark with far less mystery, until it was too late. It was 2007 when Stephen Coker, a 30-year-old Utah man, drove hundreds of miles to Nevada without explanation. He left his car in a quiet cul-de-sac in Henderson, walked down the sidewalk with a file folder in hand, and disappeared around a corner. Surveillance captured that final moment. After that, nothing. No foul play, no obvious reason to travel, no answers. His cell phone pinged local towers for 2 days after, as if someone or something was still moving it. Family and friends searched tirelessly, but the desert does not give back what it keeps. Even digital trails, which once seemed immortal, go cold. And just when you think you've heard the most bizarre disappearances imaginable, you stumble across the case of Frederick Valentich, Australia, 1978. Yes, not American soil, but American airspace heard the last of him. Valentich, a 20-year-old pilot, was flying a small plane over Bass Strait when he radioed Melbourne Air Traffic Control. He reported being followed by a strange aircraft, long, metallic, glowing. He said, "It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." Then, silence. Then, static. Then, the line went dead. His plane was never found. No wreckage, no body. Just his last haunting transmission. Skeptics called it a hoax. Believers called it an abduction. The truth, lost in the clouds that night. And though it was an Australian sky, the fear reached American shores, feeding an already growing paranoia, because sometimes people vanish into the sky itself. But you don't need a cockpit or conspiracy to disappear. Sometimes all it takes is a routine day. In 1996, 6-year-old Morgan Nick was playing catch with friends during a Little League game in Alma, Arkansas. Her mother was watching from the stands. Morgan ran to the car to empty her shoes of sand.
and that was the last anyone ever saw her. A witness recalled seeing a red truck, someone unfamiliar standing by. But within minutes, the game ended, the field emptied, and Morgan was gone. The town froze. Posters went up, police searched homes, volunteers swept rivers. Her abduction triggered a ripple effect that led to the creation of the Morgan Mick Foundation and major changes in child alert systems across the country. But Morgan herself, still missing, as if the earth cracked open and swallowed her in the middle of a baseball field, lit by floodlights and laughter. The lights are often still on when people vanish. That's the detail that haunts the 2004 disappearance of Brianna Maitlan. The 17-year-old had just finished her shift at a Vermont restaurant. She told coworkers she was tired but okay. Around 11:20 p.m., she got in her car and drove off. The next morning, her car was found abandoned, backed into an old barn 1.5 miles from the restaurant. The rear of the car had crashed into the wall. Her purse, phone, ATM card, all inside, but Brianna was gone. Investigators found odd clues, loose bills on the dash, a water bottle in the front seat that didn't belong to her, and later, years later, unconfirmed rumors of foul play, a local drug ring, a witness too scared to testify. But none of it led to Brianna. She remains missing. The image of her car wedged awkwardly into that barn still circulates online like a horror scene, paused mid-scream. Some vanish in chaos, others in silence, and some, like the Sodder children, disappear into fire. Christmas Eve, 1945, Fayetteville, West Virginia. George and Jenny Sodder had 10 children. That night, 5 were sleeping upstairs. A fire broke out. Flames engulfed the home in minutes. The parents and 5 children escaped, but the other 5? Gone. No remains, no bodies, no bones in the ash. Experts claimed the fire wasn't hot enough to cremate bone. A telephone line had been cut. A man was seen stealing a ladder from the Sodder yard that night. A woman at a nearby diner claimed she'd seen the missing children in a car the next morning.
George and Jenny spent the rest of their lives searching. They put up a billboard with the children's faces along Route 16. It stayed there for decades. To this day, many believe the Sodder children were kidnapped, that the fire was staged, that the truth died with the parents who never, not for a single day, believed their children died in that fire. Sometimes, faith in a mystery is all that remains. And sometimes, there isn't even that. In 2011, Lauren Spearer, a 20-year-old Indiana University student, went out partying with friends. Around 4:30 a.m., surveillance showed her walking barefoot near her dorm. She never made it home. She didn't take her purse, she left her phone. She was intoxicated, alone, and vulnerable. Witnesses gave confusing accounts. Some said she'd left to walk back. Others said she was with a friend. One man lawyered up immediately and refused to speak to police. Another moved out of state. Despite hundreds of leads, her case remains unsolved. And her parents still post on social media every year. Same message, same hope, same ache. Bring Lauren home. The weight of the unknown is heaviest for those left behind. The missing are frozen in time, but those who love them, they age, they search, they break, and sometimes they keep secrets of their own. It was 1937 when the world lost one of its most iconic women, Amelia Earhart. Flying a Lockheed Electra in an attempt to circumnavigate the globe, Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan vanished over the Pacific Ocean.
Their last known transmission placed them near Howland Island. The US Navy launched a massive search. Nothing. Over the decades, theories exploded. Captured by the Japanese, lost at sea, crashed on a deserted island, eaten by crabs. Pieces of metal and bone have been found, but nothing conclusively hers. A woman who conquered the sky, devoured by it. She wasn't the first to disappear under blue, and she won't be the last. Every year, over 600,000 people go missing in the United States. Most are found, but thousands vanish without a trace. No note, no witness, no goodbye. Like Brian Shaffer, an Ohio State medical student last seen on security footage entering a bar in 2006. The cameras never recorded him leaving. No windows, no hidden exits. He walked in and simply never walked out. As if the floor opened up beneath him. As if the shadows themselves had teeth. And that's the thing about these stories. They don't have neat endings. They don't come with justice or closure. They hang in the air, unfinished, waiting. They say the mind needs resolution. A story without an ending gnaws at something deep inside us. That's why people keep telling ghost stories. Why strangers comb through cold case files late at night. Why do forums never stop speculating? Because without answers, the only thing left is imagination, and imagination doesn't sleep. Not when a mother swears she saw her missing daughter in a crowd 20 years later. Not when a man finds a note in an abandoned building signed by someone declared dead a decade before. Not when a missing girl's voicemail password is changed 6 days after she vanished.
The evidence never quite lines up. The timelines stutter. The suspects die. The bodies never surface. And what's left behind is a whisper. A bruise in history. A door left half open. In small towns and big cities, forests and freeways, homes and highways, they vanish. Boys who went for a bike ride, women who left for work, children who ran upstairs and were never seen again. Lovers who went hiking, soldiers, students, fathers, sisters. We remember their names, if we can. And even when we forget, the silence remembers. Maybe that's the part that haunts us the most. Not that they vanished, but they could be anywhere, still out there, still waiting, still watching, still unsolved, still gone.